Hi, everyone. This is the 27th episode of the All Things AI podcast. My name is Ishan Kosaraju, and I'm your host. Here with me today is Stefan Weitz, the CEO and co-founder of HumanX, one of the world's largest and most premier AI conferences. Prior to HumanX, Stefan was an 18-year veteran at Microsoft. So thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, of course. And I'd like to get straight into it. I know the conference is just literally a few weeks away from this point. So just tell me a bit about the conference and why you initially had the idea of starting it.
Yeah, we're about 6 weeks out. You're right. It's a little crazy. Well, it was pretty simple. I've been a nerd since I was a little kid. I've loved AI since I was a little kid. I've loved robotics and all the technology that can be enabled by AI. And I worked on it for years at Microsoft, other places. And when we saw the Transformers come out in 17, and then we saw the GPTs come out later than that, it signaled a new era of what was possible. Not that necessarily GPTs are AI because they're not necessarily AI, but they provided a new human computer interaction model, which I was very excited about. And so I can see how this was going to be something bigger, I think, than the applied stats that a lot of folks understand GPTs to be. And so my partners and I went out and asked a bunch of our friends who are CEOs of these large companies, how are you approaching this AI? What are you doing with this? How are you putting it in your business? And the vast majority of people we spoke to who were leading businesses and leading companies about a year ago now didn't have much of a plan, or they had a bad plan, or they had a good plan that they thought was good, but actually was bad. And so we said, well, that's a problem. If literally some of the biggest companies in the world don't understand how they're going to use this technology, that means a couple of things. Either the technology is going to be deployed incorrectly and underperform what it could do, deployed incorrectly and cause problems in their businesses or in society. And those are both bad outcomes that will ultimately really harm the development and promulgation of AI across the planet. So we said, let's go ahead and try to fix this and bring people together, bring leaders together, bring experts together in a way where they can share this information, share what actually has to be done to be effective with AI, and hopefully continue to move this forward.
For sure. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I think really one of the other things about AI that I've been looking into is like small businesses. So I think one thing
Yeah.
is really becoming clear. Whether you're looking at these small businesses, which we'll cover a bit later on, or even like major companies, it seems that adoption of AI is extremely powerful. The only question is it being done in the right way, and how can you properly apply the tools that are out there? So yeah, awesome to hear that. And the next thing that I want to look at is what is really offered to attendees at the conference. I've seen what you guys are offering myself, and I think it's a great opportunity. So I also like to broadcast that a bit more on the podcast.
Sure, appreciate it. Yeah, it's more of a festival than a conference. So a few different things. There are 300 of the world's greatest speakers on stages, four different stages across the 3 days. Everyone from the big models to the interesting companies building on top of those models to companies who deployed AI. So really the entire kind of relevant universe of AI leaders, which is pretty fun to see. There's a show floor which has a bunch of different vendors who offer solutions with AI for pressing needs of companies. There's incredible networking opportunities, lots of different areas to find your people that are like you or have similar interests to you and actually connect in one-on-one ways. There are ways to find vendors called Solution Bridge, which will help you match your current problem you have in your company with a solution, which is fun. And a ton of different venture-backed companies and startups who are competing across the event for prizes and for money and funding and so it really is it's a place to come if you have budgetary or board level authority to go do something with AI. This is where you want to be to really be in the mix, to be with people that can actually help you and really learn about what can take your business to the next level. And we have some pretty cool entertainment. I can't speak to it yet, say it is yet, but it's pretty cool closing night party. So stick around for that.
For sure, yeah. And I think the part that I'm really interested about and looking forward to see like what the press releases and things are showing is the solution bridge because I've seen a lot of other AI conferences like exist out there, but the thing is, sure they might have networking and everything, but the opportunity to like actually bring your company there if you're on the board of something, if you're a CEO or a C-suite leader,
Yeah.
and actually thinking, hey, this is the biggest challenge we have. So how can you guys solve that for us? I think that's one of the most straightforward and amazing things that you guys have to offer. So really looking forward to hearing more about that. So thank
It
you.
should be good. Yeah.
Yeah. And the next thing that I want to cover a bit more is like AI startups. I know you're also an angel investor, so you've had a lot of experience in developing these AI startups. So in your tenure, have you seen anything as the X factor for development and success, especially considering that the startup field is extremely saturated right now?
It's very much saturated. The thing that I'm not sure this is necessarily what's successful because I think right now you're seeing success uh, as funding rounds and up rounds and all those sorts of things. It's hard to kind of figure out what is successful. The things that make me most excited, things that we invest in both as an angel or I invest as an angel and with my venture fund as well, is are companies that are looking at frankly boring human processes. And these are companies that are just going after just things that you wouldn't necessarily care about, but they get done every day in really complex and onerous ways that usually involve people. A good example we saw recently was a company that was helping with what's called continuity of care. Basically, you discharged from the hospital, someone has to call you to make sure you're taking your medicine, you're coming in for your checkup, and these are usually nurses who are doing this, who are highly skilled, relatively expensive, and they're on their phone trying to get a hold of people saying, "Are you coming in for your checkup? Did you take your pills? Did you do your exercises?" Really inefficient. And so we saw a company that has spent a couple of years building language models and actually voice models where they can call the patients and do the exact same thing and be much more effective. And so it's an example where you can actually, and by the way, those AI models have far better knowledge just because they can see everything across that patient than a nurse maybe has to just pick up the phone and dial 10 different people. So not only can it be, it can return nurses back to doing what they should be doing, which is caring for patients in the hospital, but it can be much more efficient for the patient. It can be much better outcomes for the patient because this AI knows everything about them. The patients, even a couple of them I've heard a few calls, they'll say, "Is this an AI?" And the AI will say, "Yeah, I am, but I have all this information." And they go, "Oh, okay." And they keep talking for like an hour to the AI. And the AI doesn't get tired, doesn't have to take a break, doesn't get annoyed. So really, companies like that are looking at these really intractable societal problems, especially as society gets older, and we have fewer people to do the work that needs to be done. I love companies like that are really tapping into those particular scenarios.
Yeah, that's incredible because, and I really like that example. A lot of the times, at least I think one of the biggest things that a lot of companies might even get caught up in is like the profitability of what you're doing. But I think part of it is put the profit behind maybe the mission of what you have. And so if your mission is really to like advance and turbocharge like healthcare and save the time of nurses and doctors, I think that's really important because we're already seeing massive shortages in healthcare right now.
Absolutely.
There was, I think, one statistic by 2030 we'll see a shortage of 10 million healthcare workers. So I think how are you going to fill that gap? It has to be AI. That's
Yeah,
potentially the only viable way of doing it. So I
that's
think,
right.
yeah, looking at developing that solution and then maybe looking into like, hey, how is this profitable is great. And even like if you look to other big tech companies, like you always see that they have a mission, like whether it's Elon, for example, it's like electric vehicles. We need those going
Mhm,
into the future. And that's why
mhm,
we've seen like tax credits and things like that over the course
mhm.
of the past few years. So I think there's a lot of relatability between these emerging startups that you really like and a lot of big tech companies that have already succeeded,
Yeah, I think, I mean, the reality is you do need to have a business model before you
for
necessarily
sure.
build a company. But I think what history has shown over and over again is if someone creates something of real durable value, people generally pay for it. Not always, but most of the time, if you create something which is unique and can provide a benefit to a customer, like customers will pay. It's kind of the way it works. So yeah,
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah. And the next thing that I want to look at is like AI investments. So the Trump
Mhm.
administration is turbocharging investment, the $500 billion AI Stargate project, 100 billion of which is already coming from SoftBank. So we're seeing that there's international backers behind this project as well. And so I'm wondering, how can this be leveraged to turn the United States into a global tech leader? And maybe building off of that, where specifically should this money be going? Because it's governmental investment.
Well, actually, if I recall correctly, I think the half a billion has no government money at all. I believe it's just private companies
Yeah,
funding it. And I
yeah,
think Trump just liked to put a name on it, which is great.
yeah,
So it is at this point still public or private money.
yeah.
Where should it go? Holy smokes, that's a tough question. And how does the U.S. Either become or retain its leadership in AI? Also a tough question. It's honestly, I people would have said that money should go to model building. That's what people would have said a year ago. And that's what, obviously
Like data
OpenAI has been
centers?
spending. But that's what certainly when infrastructure is important. But like
Yeah.
once you build the infrastructure, what do you do with it? And so people have said traditionally we have to continue to build these models. We want to get to agentic, we want to get to AGI, we want to get to all these things that kind of create this superhuman power. And you obviously have seen OpenAI spend a ton of money and do incredible work to get to a place where they're at now more of a reasoning type model, which is exciting. And then you saw DeepSeek, which is a Chinese company, released their O1 model on, I think it was Thursday of last week, which was an open source model, meaning anyone could take it, modify it, use it for free, and it actually, across many benchmarks, beat OpenAI's most recent reasoning model out of the gate. And it cost $5.6 million to produce with 2,000 GPUs. So if you compare that against some of our biggest frontier models, that's 95 to 98% cheaper and smaller than ours. So like there's a I don't think anybody knows right now kind of where this is all going to go. And so I think you have to kind of spread your bets. Certainly, we need more infrastructure. Certainly, we need more energy infrastructure and a grid that can support massive amounts of power these things require. But I still worry about that because at the end of the day, we know chips will get more efficient. There's no reason to assume that the chips we have today will continue on its kind of their scaling power that they have. In fact, if you look at companies like Etch, for example, or Sambanova or Grok or all these companies, they're focusing on chips that are more purpose built and do consume less power and will actually be where a lot of AI is run. So to me, when you can run an O1, I'm sorry, it was deflection and throughout. It was Mistral. Mistral released a model a couple of days ago as well for visual. So you can do visual models on your phone, for example, and they can put the entire model onto a 2 gigabytes of storage on your device and run it all on your device, which means you no longer need a data center, which means power requirements become less important. So it's a terrible answer to a question because then I think the answer is I don't know. At this point, I know we need a little more. We need more power infrastructure. We need more infrastructure itself. We need to continue to build incredible innovations in the models, but we cannot blind ourselves to the fact that the world is also racing down this path. You have the Middle East, you have Far East Asia, you've got Europe, of course, you've got all the major continents at this point are running down, building their own frontier models. So to assume just because we are America and we will win is an assumption we should not be making.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. And I think like, yeah, that's the other part about it is that you see countries like China and everyone around the world is building AI. So I also think sometimes maybe it's not a matter of one country leading, maybe it's like a collaboration of nations. Because if we want to look at AI as a problem solver, I think that necessitates collaboration, whether that's between private corporations or even countries as a whole. So I really like that answer that you gave to that one, that it's way too early because I think that's completely the way of looking at it.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I'm a Star Trek fan, so I'm hoping we get to the Confederation of planets at some point, and we start with nations and go to planets. That's what we can do.
For sure, for sure. The last thing that I want to cover briefly is your journey itself since when you were young. So I read in your bio that you started coding when you were like 8 years old. So
Yes.
what inspired you to initially take up coding?
Ooh. Well, when I was 8, it was a much different time. So that was the time of the Apple IIs, Apple IIes, and whatnot. So different computers than obviously we have today. My daughter started coding when she was even much younger than that, but different types of technology. What inspired me? Well, it was frankly science fiction. It was Star Wars. It was Star Trek. It was Knight Rider. It was all these things, and I saw computers as a way to even back. I can remember being very young, remembering, wow, I can do more things more quickly with more accuracy with my computer than I can on my own. That just stuck with me every over and over again. And the thing that I can remember very clearly was. I remember asking my dad, Dad, will the computer ever get tired of me, if I'm stuck on a problem, if I'm waiting, or with that cursor, will it ever stop flashing? He's like, no, never. And so to me, there was kind of a freedom that came with this ability to think carefully, try things, fail, delete, do it over again, and have a buddy with you that wouldn't get sick of you, wouldn't tell you to go to bed, wouldn't get angry. And then really applying that to the vision that I saw in the future of a people, of a planet, and hopefully of multiple planets if we get our way and get to Mars, living peacefully together because technology took away the things that in many cases separate us. And so that was what got me excited about. I mean, I wasn't that. thoughtful about it at 8 years old. But I'm looking back to my 8-year-old self. I can remember thinking to myself, well, I want to live in the Star Trek world. I want to live in the Star Wars world. Those are worlds that seem really important and freeing. And so, and Knight Rider, of course. Like I really wanted Kit. That was really that's what I wanted. I wanted the talking car more than anything.
I think we're pretty
It's
close to that, to be honest. We're not that far
we
away.
are we're really close. I know I have my Meta Ray-Ban glasses that with the new live AI function on there.
I've seen those. Yeah.
It's getting there. It's getting closer every day. More like Jarvis than the Knight Rider, but still same
Yeah.
kind of concept.
Yeah, and I really like that answer because that's a unique way of looking at computers in general. Like, especially if you're someone that's that motivated in like science technology, and if you're watching these science fiction movies and realizing, hey, is that really what the future looks like? And I
Yeah.
think if you're recognizing that at a young age, like your potential for innovating is extremely like it's just looking great. So building off of that, the last thing that I want to ask is how were you able to turn these like early passions into an education and a career?
Well, I've had a very long and winding road. I'm not sure I would model myself, but being a young person who was very into computing, I was a decent developer, and then decided in college I really wanted to go to law instead to be a lawyer. So I was all prepping for law, and then right as I was about to leave college, I said, actually, I don't really like. I mean, I like it, but I no longer wanted to do it. It was kind of funny how it just hit me like this is no longer interesting to me. What do I do next? Well, luckily, I still had some decent skills in technology. And really, at that point, went right into technology, went to Microsoft, and got there. And there, what inspired me the most, um, and what turned it into a career, a technology career, was especially back then when I got there, probably now too, but when I got there, especially, just there was an absolute belief that we were doing something that would change the world. I mean, it's cliche to say, but there was an intrinsic belief that nothing seemed impossible. You had some of the smartest people on the planet and on a college campus, and basically, and the best ideas usually won. And there wasn't a lot of bureaucracy, and there wasn't a lot of um, uh, patriarchy. It was very much a meritocracy in most situations. There are some that didn't always work, but generally, it's pretty good. So I think that to me, I think being open to not having a plan, honestly. I got there and just said, I'll try projects that nobody else wants to try, or I'll try things that seem really weird and obscure and hard. And being able to kind of take that path and learn from some of the best people at the company, people who've left the company now, retired, but were there, early on and were the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. Not being afraid to go and just immerse yourself in something which is completely foreign. I think every job I ever took was at Microsoft as I moved around the company I wasn't qualified for at all. I just decided I was going to go try it, and I had to learn with these great people and great mentors around me how to do these things and learn that way. So that's it to me. I probably would have been a much higher position at Microsoft or been still there if I had stuck in one path all the way through. So that's your thing. Go knock yourself out. But for me, it was more about focusing on the continual evolution and learning, which to me is the life I want to lead. So that's all I would say.
Yeah, I think continuous learning is extremely important. Like I have an uncle actually, did a PhD, did an MD, and he got his
Wow.
MBA. So it's like maybe a different path in that sense, but it's like having that drive of like, hey, I want to learn these new things. How can I apply what I already know, like in
Yeah,
medicine, possibly to like the business world? And so I think like having that mindset and curiosity to try something new that you've never seen before, completely knowing that you could fail, is really, really
oh yeah,
important. So yeah, I really, I guess, look up to that in a way because sure, you can rise through a company and do whatever, but I think like
sure.
if you want to broaden your knowledge, that's certainly the way to go. And I mean, look at where you are now, like the way that you're able to start this conference and make sure that you're getting these huge leaders there. It's because of the extensive knowledge that you've been able to develop. So yeah,
That and blackmail. No, I'm just kidding. No blackmail.
yeah.
No,
Well, I guess yeah. With that being said, thank you so much for joining me here today. Really enjoyed this
you bet.
discussion.
Ishan, pleasure. And congratulations on the podcast and congratulations on the work you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you.